talk about today is delusion. Delusion, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of big, in Buddhism, and it's really big in Zen. So I want to look at what we mean by it and how we see it, okay, in Zen. So why do we practice? Why are we here doing this thing, this Zen practice, which is something, right? It's really something. It requires some effort. It requires commitment to really deepen, allow it to have a big effect on your life. Why are we doing it? Well, it's good to really get clear on why we're not here, what Zen isn't about. Yeah, it's not about becoming all-knowing. It isn't about not feeling pain or discomfort ever again in your life. It's not about having some great metaphysical realization about the nature of reality. It's not about getting superpowers. Damn, yeah. Shucks, right? And to one degree of consciousness or acknowledgement or another, these things have entered into probably most of our minds that we want this, we're drawn to this. Certainly as a young person drawn to Zen, at least most of those things I just said is what I wanted out of Zen. The superpowers, the metaphysical insight into reality. I didn't really want omniscience, that doesn't make any sense to me, but relief from suffering and pain, yes, like perpetual relief from suffering and pain. Yeah, that was definitely on the agenda. Okay, so Zen's not about those things. It's not about those things. A lot of those things are byproducts, actually, of Zen practice. In the same way that calmness and peace are byproducts of Zen practice. But if you target to those things, if you vector to those things, if that's your goal to get those things, you won't get them. Okay, you have to be oriented properly in order for the practice to work. So Buddhism means, Buddha means the awakened one, right? So Buddhism is awakenedism. Yeah. And what are we awakening from? What is it that the Buddha's teachings and practices help us to awake from? Well, it's delusion, right? It's a sleep of the wisdom eye, so which we call delusion. What is delusion? Now really, the Buddha himself really said that this was the core thing that he was addressing, that it was the root of our suffering. Yeah. He identified attachment as the root of suffering, right? That's the second noble truth, right? And then attachment manifests as craving, aversion, and ignorance, right? These three forms that attachment takes. The root one is the ignorance, the not knowing the nature of the self. He even said that of these three forms that attachment takes, craving and aversion are actually fairly easy to deal with, or certainly easier to deal with. But the ignorance is much harder to deal with because we don't know we're ignorant. We don't see it. There's nothing to work with. Whereas there's definitely something to work with our cravings, we can feel that, and our aversions elicit those strong emotions. But the ignorance hides, it's in the unconscious that isn't always available to us. So that's the root. What is the core thing that we're ignorant of? The true nature of the self. Right? That's the core delusion. Here's some key lines in Dogen's Genjo Koan that I've brought up before, but maybe most of you haven't heard me talk about these, so I want to bring it out here because I think it really encapsulates what we mean by delusion, how Zen understands delusion. And how it relates to the self. So the lines from the Genjo Koan go like this. Delusion, let's say, to carry the self forward and experience myriad things is delusion. That myriad things come forward and experience themselves is enlightenment. Okay, just those two lines. So there's 5 terms, like in these 2 sentences. There's enlightenment and delusion. There's the self and myriad things. And then we have the verb, experience. And the only difference between enlightenment and delusion, the big one, the thing we're all looking for, we don't want to be deluded, we want to be enlightened. The only difference is just the order, you could say, of operations of the self and myriad things. When the self carries itself forward and has experiences, that's delusive. When myriad things come forth and experience themselves, that's awakenedness. All right. So, do you experience yourself as experiencing things? Right? Like what happened yesterday? Did you have a bunch of experiences? I did. Yeah. Do you envision yourself having experiences in the future? Yeah, I mean, you probably visualize them vividly. Are you having an experience right now? Or are you? Right? It can almost be like, maybe not. Oh, okay. Ooh. This is just happening. You can almost drop in instantly to that place. What if there's no self having an experience? What if this is all just happening and experiencing itself? So really, we are, you could say we're constantly sort of shifting between an awakened place and a deluded place, according to this definition. I can't speak for you, but you can investigate and you can see how that's working for you. Yeah. So to study Buddhism is to study the self, and to study the self is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to be awakened by everything, by the 10,000 things. That's the next part of the Genjo Koan after this part. Okay, so we study ourselves to see where we're kind of having experiences and what's going on there. Yeah. So these experiences that we're having, they're not just mental, okay? We can get really kind of mentally oriented, overly mentally focused with Zen practice. We're sitting here, we're quiet, our minds have ample opportunity to chatter away, and then we can try to think our way into a better state, enlightenment. It's a little bit of a, occupational hazard of Zen practice is this all this stuff up here, all right? But all of this experiencing quality, how it's happening, is definitely not just mental. In fact, fundamental Buddhist understanding is that every mental phenomenon has a physical component, and every physical component has a mental component. There's nothing that is purely one or the other. Always inextricably linked. I came upon this quote from Feldenkrais, Moshe Feldenkrais. Some of you may know him, movement teacher. My wife, Miyoku, pointed it out to me this morning. And he said, no matter how closely we look, it is difficult to find a mental act that can take place without the support of some physical function. Yeah, so there's no such thing as this sort of disembodied realm of mental activity. It's not there. This whole body is involved with all mental phenomena. Right. So this experiencing of the self is both physical and mental. Okay. Okay, we're going to do this now. Everybody stand up. Yeah, you never know. You never know. Okay. All right, if you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes, and everyone just hop up and down. Just do it. Okay. Shake the arms. Shake the arms. Shake the head. Woo! Shout. Woo! Woo! Yeah. Yes, stop. What's that? Different outlook on life? I do. I was wondering how that was going to go over. Good, I see smiles. Who did that? Where did you go? Maybe you stuck around, I don't know. Maybe you were never here. Maybe you're not here now. So, the view is important. Yeah, the view is important because the delusion it's a misguided view, and it has a physiological system that tends to hold that view in place. Okay, it's kind of how karma works, is that you kind of make a certain association or you make a certain action, and then that action has a consequence, and then the brain and the body kind of get wired to have those results happen. Right? Neuroplasticity, right? What fires together wires together. You do certain things, you make certain associations, and those remain, and then you start to act in accordance with all those associations that you've kind of reinforced within your nervous system. So the view gets contracted in the same way that the body gets contracted. So there's primary kind of things that reinforce this contracted view, which tend to be contractions in the body too. So fear is a big one. Fear, I've come to see like fear acts like glue on the body-mind. It sort of gums up and keeps body-mind awareness from expanding and radiating, and have the antennas be fully alive. Yeah, it tends to just glue up, gum everything up. What does fear feel like for you? What does it feel? Give me a few. Anyone?
Heart pounding.
Heart pounding, okay. Anyone else? Where do you feel it?
Contraction.
Yeah, Contraction in the solar plexus, yes. How about in the belly? Contraction in the belly, yeah. Contraction in the belly, contraction in the solar plexus. Tightness and, yeah, that adrenalized activity in the heart, and then a kind of a coldness usually.
Tight breath.
Tight breath, contraction again.
Lungs contracted.
The lungs get contracted, yeah. Lungs get contracted. So all of that's coming in. Does this affect your mind? Does it affect your view? So much. So much. Do you ever go through an period of anxiety, and you're fearful of money, say, or your partner's going to break up with you, whatever it might be, that fear system comes up, and then what happens with the view? What happens with the mind?
Narrows.
It narrows, and what comes up? Crazy thoughts, catastrophe. Right? And then you come through it, right? And something shifts. And suddenly you're like, I was insane. It was temporary insanity, right? You ever have that just clear view of that? Okay. So this is what's going on all the time, is the contracted views is coming in all the time and reinforcing it. And then we just end up in that place too much. And then we tend to reinforce that contracted view. So we can't fight that contracted view, right? We have to allow it to experience itself. We have to allow everything to experience itself, allow the fear to experience itself, allow that view to happen. We have to give up any sort of control around how we're feeling or how we're thinking. Okay. Of course, it's really helpful to notice that we're crazy, right? And then what do we do? Okay, we have to allow ourselves to feel that fear, whatever that activation system is that's going through the body, and allow that to express itself. But does that mean that we have to completely live in a completely safe place all the time? Go into a cork-lined room? No, of course not. Right? Because it's actually in the experience of those edges, of the edge of our contractedness, to feel that we can dissolve, that as a limitation. So, I think it was Ram Dass or somebody said, and I'm sure many have observed that, I think what Ram Dass said was, there are more people who are awake in the Buddhist sense of being awake on death row than there are, out on the streets of New York. So they're right up against the edge of this terrifying possibility of annihilation. And to be in that inescapably, and to feel that, so moment to moment, breath by breath, because they're not going to be in a constant state of freaking out. You can't do that. Ultimately, you have to surrender control, and they have no control. And then to experience that is profoundly awakening. And actually what they come to see and what we come to see when we move into our fear experientially, bodily, is that a lot of what's happening is that kind of circuit of we have an idea that something's going to happen. It creates a physical sensation in our body, and then we notice that physical sensation in our body happening, or perhaps we become aware of it as a feeling sense, and that starts to escalate the alarm systems in our body, so that goes to some more view that we start to catastrophize, and then it escalates, it spirals up. But there are certain ideas that are a part of that, that are associated with that reinforcement. That's where not knowing mind comes in. It's to really not believe these ideas that we have. I mean, it's actually recognizing the ideas that you do have. It's a profound and a very powerful, liberating practice to recognize that you're in an anxiety condition, your fear state, and then just ask yourself, well, what is it I'm afraid of? Because there is a view in there. There is a knowingness, a false knowingness in there about what it is you're afraid of. You're going to not have enough money to pay the bills. Your partner's going to break up with you or cheat on you. That something terrible is going to happen to your kids. There's always that subconscious something in there that is perpetuating that fear cycle. So to see that and recognize that gives you something, something to work with. I was sitting in zazen, in a daily session, or even more in session. We approach the edges, these extreme states. If you're just sitting there, just calming your mind down, you're a blind otter. That's what Hakuin called it. You're just sitting there, just pacifying yourself. This practice isn't about pacifying yourself. It actually is to approach those edges of your comfort zone where you start to feel contracted. Push that edge of the comfort zone, to actually put yourself in a uncomfortable place. Right? The strength of the container of a group like this, and especially so in session, in retreat, is to give a really safe place to be really experimental with your edges and to go to them. Really hold that feeling. Feel the movement of the energy in the discomfort zone, in that gray area. Allow the experience to experience itself. That fundamental contraction of I'm having this experience, which doesn't feel good, very quickly, in a nanosecond, leads to what am I going to do to make it stop? Because it's so self-centered. And the self wants its comfort, and its ease, and its safety, and its pleasure. But how about letting it experience itself? Let it experience itself, and that builds on itself. Both of these paths build on themselves. They reinforce each other. That's how karma works. The contraction leads to more contraction, and the expansion leads to more expansion. Okay, these two kind of paths. It's the beauty. That's the good side of karma, right? The positive produces the positive. So keep allowing it to experience itself, experience itself, experience itself, experiences itself, and then it gets easier. It gets more in flow. You get the feel of it, like riding a bike. Oh, okay. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about controlling it. It's not about making it change. Just allow, 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 and on and on and on and on. So we continue practicing together through delusion, through awakening, delusion, awakening, delusion, awakening. Yeah, what a weird and wonderful existence this is. Yeah. Okay, those are my words for today. I hope they've been interesting or entertaining or enjoyable, and you, if not, you got some hopping in, so it was that. Okay, thank you for your attention.